Welcome to the Happier and Healthier podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marlowe, and this is a place where we don't rely on good luck or good genes for our health and happiness, but rather we create it with our thoughts and our actions each and every single day. Each week, I'll bring you a thought or a guest that will help you live your happiest and healthiest life. Are you ready? Welcome back to the Happier and Healthier podcast. Today, we're talking about building a natural remedy brand with Nina Mullen, the co-founder and co-CEO of Hilma, a new natural remedy brand backed by science. I know a lot of happier and healthier listeners are entrepreneurial, so I thought it would be cool to take a peek behind the curtain of what it takes to build a consumer product brand in the wellness space during a pandemic, no less. We also discuss what to look for and what to look out for when it comes to choosing any type of supplements. This episode is brought to you by the Clear Skin Plan, my 90-day program and meal plan to clear your skin from within naturally. If you've suffered with acne for months, years, or even decades, it's time to look within. Chronic acne is seldom a topical problem, but rather a sign of an internal imbalance and inflammation. Discover your root causes and remedy them with simple dietary and lifestyle changes. Head to mariamarlowe.com/clear-skin-plan to start today.
Nina, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Maria. It's great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about Hilma and how it came to be, because I've been seeing it everywhere from my friends' Instagrams to I was at Juice Press the other day and I saw it in their store. Yeah, so I've been seeing it everywhere. Can you explain how Hilma came to fruition?
Well, Hilma is a natural remedies brand that we create scientifically backed everyday natural remedies that you can use in your life, whether it's for upset stomach relief, tension relief, immune support, etc. And the reason for being behind Hilma is, of course, a personal one. Myself and my two co-founders, Hillary Courtner and Lily Galiff, all had various kind of childhood experiences with natural products that kind of led us to live a more naturally inclined life when it came to the decisions we were making across our cosmetics, our food, our personal care items. And the category of OTC health remedies, things like Emergen-C, for example, really felt stuck in the past. And so Hilma aims basically to fill that void in the market by creating accessible natural and herbal options for a more mainstream consumer who has less education around exactly what herbs to use, or perhaps, frankly, less time to kind of delve in and take those purchasing decisions into their own hands. And so that's why we started Hilma.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I avoid pharmaceuticals and even like over-the-counter medications as much as possible, but sometimes you need something.
Of course.
The other day I was looking for like a lozenge, like to soothe a sore throat, and everything had sugar. It was just all pure sugar. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure sucking on sugar is not only not good for your teeth, but it's also not going to be good for your throat because we know sugar suppresses the immune system. So it's just crazy that it's taken this long even for people to kind of put two and two together and even think about changing that. So that's amazing. And I love how, it's always, we find an issue and then we go to solve it. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing how long it has taken to get here. When we first had this idea, we had like a good 3-week period where we were basically like, why hasn't anybody else done this yet? Because it just felt so incongruous with the purchasing decisions that so many people were making. Clean household cleaners had come out and kind of become mainstream like 5 years before, and these are products that people are using for their health. So it definitely seemed incongruous.
So when it comes to the formulation of the products, you mentioned you're using a lot of different herbs. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through how did you do the R&D for that? How did you come up with the herbs? And I guess why herbs?
Definitely. So few different questions in there. I'll start with how we tackle the formulation process and overall. So from day one of starting Hilma, we each knew that herbs were very powerful from our own personal experiences. And I can get into that later as well, for healing these types of issues that we were basically aiming to solve. And so that was always the overarching vision, was to bring herbal natural remedies to the US, because it is so prevalent in so many other cultures. And there's so much research behind it. Plants are the starting off points for many pharmaceutical drugs. For example, willow bark, which is the hero ingredient in our tension relief product, is actually the reason why aspirin was discovered, because it's a naturally occurring source of salicylic acid. So there's a lot of research that already exists in herbs, which is an amazing kind of something that we reference all the time. And it's an important aspect of our brand. So in terms of how we approach R&D, science was the core tenet of how we started off creating this brand. There are a lot of herbal brands on the market. They tend to be less trusted by the more mainstream consumer because they are not presenting research in kind of the more clinical Western way. And so we knew that in order to bring herbals to that, I would say, more skeptical consumer, we needed to make science a huge part of how we approached R&D overall from day one. So what we did was we went out to recruit an amazing team of scientists to work with us. And so we now have 5 scientific advisors who are all equity owners in the business. They're partners with us, and they work with us to both formulate our products as well as advise us on the latest research that's going on in the market, but also our own clinical research, which is a huge part of our process as well. And once we assembled that team, we really worked with them to figure out what products we could create in order to adhere to a certain standard of scientific rigor. And by that, I mean that, we are hamstrung by what research already exists if we're trying to create a product that has a depth of clinical research behind it already. So, for example, we couldn't create a product to solve a very niche issue using herbs, because herbs probably haven't yet been researched for that indication. And so we eliminate from the get-go certain indications if there is not a wealth of research behind it. And then from there, we basically whittle down which herbs we want to include. And we also include essential minerals as well in some of our products. So we whittle down the ingredients that we're interested in including based on the demonstrated efficacy that exists in the scientific literature. And then from there, we also layer on top our own clinical research, which is a phased approach over time, since we can't launch like clinicals on everything prior to launch. But we layer that on top of that as well.
Yeah. And I know personally, one thing that I'm always skeptical about with herbs is that you don't really know where they're coming from. And there has been a history of herbs, and not just herbs, but really any supplement, either not being what it says it is, or being contaminated with heavy metals or other things that you don't want to be ingesting. So how do you source your herbs, and how do you overcome that hurdle?
Definitely. And it's a huge problem in the industry, and one that I think has come into the public's eye much more so, which is good and should be under scrutiny. So how do we source our herbs? We, again, lean on the best. We have, as I mentioned, our scientific experts, but we also have an amazing sourcing expert who comes from one of the legacy herbal brands that is truly doing best in class sourcing work, where you can scan QR codes on bottles and actually see where your herbs are grown. And he has personally visited pretty much every herbal farm like in the world. And he really is incredible. And he advises us and knows we get to meet with all of our suppliers and kind of understand the process ourselves so that we can feel comfortable with it once he recommends a source. And we always kind of keep in mind all of the things that you mentioned in terms of adulteration and all of that. But then we also do our own testing. We do 4 rounds of testing on raw materials, in process, finished goods, and stability testing. And then on top of that, we also submit all of our products to third-party certifications. So the one that we really are the most proud of is the Clean Label Project, which is pretty much the most rigorous standard for not only pesticides, heavy metals, but also plasticizers and other contaminants that can get into the product. And it's by far more rigorous than anything that is required by the FDA, and basically is a stamp of third-party approval. They spot check our products. They order from our website at various intervals. And it's something we're really proud of because it's pretty much unheard of in the supplement industry for more mass brands to undergo that type of third-party testing.
Yeah. And you would think it would be required, for something that we're ingesting.
You would think.
So I think food and supplements here are a little bit like the wild, wild west. So it's very like buyer beware, and you have to really do a lot of your own research. So, that's great that you have third-party testing. I think that's really important to show that you care about what is in the product and what you're giving people to ingest. So that's really important.
Yeah, it's amazing that it's not required.
I know. I mean, it really should be. It's mind-boggling. But okay, let's talk also about the clinical trials, because that's something that's also sort of unique. I do think a lot of brands will work off of, some studies they found in PubMed and not necessarily do their own research on their own specific product. So can you just talk a little bit more about that? Why was it so important for you guys to invest in clinical research? And can you share a little bit more about, what that actually looks like?
Definitely. I love talking about our clinicals, so I could talk about this all day. There's a few different reasons why we decided to do this so early on, because it is a huge investment, both in time, team resources, but also financially. They're really expensive to run. As you might imagine, running studies on real people requires a lot of effort and coordination. But we felt both from a trust building perspective on our products themselves, but also just from an industry perspective, that we really wanted to put our money where our mouth is. We're saying that science is important to us. Well, guess what? We should also be researching and contributing to the body of research that everyone is able to pull from when it comes to plant medicine, because it is an underfunded area in terms of clinical research, and one that we think it should increase, whether it's academic institutions, whether it's private companies, everyone kind of who is leaning into this trend of natural should also be contributing to the body of scientific research. And so that's really why we decided to invest here. And it is it's very unique for a private supplement company to do the type of research we did and to publish the results so publicly, because a lot of people want to protect the IP once they run a study. But for us, as I said, we believe that studying plants should be information that everyone has access to. And that's why we kind of made the more public decision there. And in terms of how we ran those, there's a bunch of different types of clinicals that you can do. We did foundational clinical studies to establish a baseline for product performance. And we aim to do future clinicals on the products that we've ran these foundational studies on in the future as well. So what I mean by a foundational study is we gave, in a controlled environment with a CRO, we completely blinded. We gave between 70 to 100 people our product who were pre-qualified, met predetermined criteria, and asked them to chronicle their experience with it over a dedicated period of time. And so that varied because we've run 3 clinicals on 3 different products, depending on the product that we were testing. But essentially what it allowed us to do is observe, if you take this product 30 minutes after experiencing heartburn or indigestion, in the case of our upset stomach relief product, how do your symptoms change over time from the moment that you experienced the problem to 15 minutes later, 30 minutes later, 60 minutes later, et cetera. And that's the type of structure that we followed.
And with the clinical studies, what is, your customer response? But I would imagine that people are excited that you have clinical trials and just trust the product more.
Definitely. I think, our early adopters who are our really loyal, vocally supportive customers love our clinicals because they are that more educated consumer who is looking to make really proactive decisions. And they're the ones who get into the weeds and kind of read all the information on the website. And then there are consumers who just kind of see that we did it and it checks a box for them. And they're, excited to see that we did it, but they don't really dig into the details. So it's kind of it depends on the type of consumer that you are. But I think we're getting more and more of the people reading the fine print, especially in the supplement space. As you mentioned already, people have a little bit more skepticism than they used to because of all of the negative information that's come out about adulteration and things like that in the industry. So I do think that it's a trust building thing for a lot of consumers.
And so Hilma is the first time you're working on a supplement brand. Is that right?
Yeah.
So as a new entrepreneur in this space, I'm curious, what are some things that you learned that you're shocked by? Like, okay, so one thing could be that you don't actually have to test the supplements, like you're not required by law to test the supplements and make sure they're safe. Like, what are some other things that really surprised you?
Yeah. So one quick point of clarification, you are required, the FDA actually does regulate supplements, that you are required to test your product to make sure that what you say is in it is in it. The thing that you're not required to do is test for pesticides and adhere to a more rigorous standard for heavy metal testing. You actually are required to test for heavy metals at a more lenient level. But anyways, that's aside. That was certainly a surprise. I think another surprise for us was as we started to dig into the customer need was just how little information there was for people who wanted to shop by solution rather than ingredient. So there are a lot of brands that exist in the single ingredient space. And this is, if you think about walking into a vitamin aisle or a natural food store in their supplement section, this is where you see a ton of people marketing things like vitamin B or, single ingredients, where the burden is really on the consumer to understand, why should I be taking this? How should I be taking this? How is this going to impact me? So that was one thing that I think really surprised us as we started to dig in, because that's not how a lot of people shop. A lot of people shop by saying, I have this problem. I think I might be coming down with something, like, how do I support my immune system? Or I think, I'm experiencing occasional heartburn or acid indigestion. What can I do that's natural that will help me both in the moment, but also preventatively in the long term? And so that was another big surprise. I think the other thing is really just an appreciation for how challenging it is to bring a physical product to market. So one of the benefits of being an outsider when you're an entrepreneur is you're the one who says, well, why not? Why not? Why we can't, just because other people aren't doing this, that doesn't mean that we can't do it differently. And that's really where the innovation comes from. And then as you get farther and farther into it, you're like, wow, this is really hard. And it takes so much to actually bring it to life. And I think that, there's the naivete going in as an entrepreneur that, we're going to sail through, and then timelines change, and then things get delayed. And then, you find out that the crop yield of Boswellia was low this year, and all of a sudden that changes your plans. And so I think that was another thing that we really learned.
So how long did it take you from idea to get a product on the shelf or, on your website to sell?
2.5 years. It was a really long road because our product involves so much science and rigor around the testing and everything that we've talked about. It took us a really long time. And I think that's actually something that we're proud of, because we didn't kind of just flip a switch and turn something, throw up a website and start selling something. But it has certainly been a long road from idea to actual sell.
And now that you do have all of this experience and knowledge in this space, now your products are focused more like on the medicine cabinet. So for a stomach ache or boosting your immune system, right? But in general, when a consumer, someone listening to this podcast, is in the market for like even like any type of supplement, whether it's a vitamin or whatever, what are some questions that they should be asking? What are some things that they should be looking for to know that the product that they're going to purchase is a high quality product?
Definitely. I do think that the third-party certifications is really a great stamp of approval that consumers should be looking for. I also think keeping a really close eye on, obviously, everyone looks at the supplement facts label to understand what's in the product, but I always really spend a lot of time looking at the other ingredients section, which is kind of in the smaller, finer print underneath the supplement facts grid, because that also tells you a lot about what is in the product. Is that a really long section? If yes, start kind of paying a little bit closer attention. Maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know, but that's definitely a place that consumers can spend a little bit more time. And then I just think getting to know the brand, in this day and age where we have so many options of who we choose to support with our dollars, I think that getting to know the brand, understanding what they stand for, and the people behind it is also a great thing for people to do.
Yeah. And so just circling back to that other ingredient section, because I do always I notice that, like the bottle can look so great and the main ingredient seems so great. And then you look at other ingredients and there's like 5 other things in there that you don't really know what they are. So are there any specific other ingredients that you generally try to avoid, or ones that you think are better? Obviously, when you're making a supplement, there has to be, certain ingredients and additives, right? And even the little encasing, the capsule. So yeah, what things are you hard no pass? If I see this, I'm not going to buy it. And which ones are you okay, that's harmless and necessary?
It's a great question. And it's different for everyone. Everyone has a different kind of level of comfort. I would say for us, one of the biggest ones that is used in supplements is stearates, which are basically processing flow agents that make it easier for a product to be shelf stable for very, very long periods of time. But one of the negatives of stearates in products is that it actually decreases the absorbability of the product. So again, as we're talking about adulterants, it's less that it's an adulterant, but it actually is decreasing the efficacy of what you're buying, which is of course the opposite of what you want. So I think that's one that I always tell people to really look out for. And also we're vegan as a brand, and that actually it's not totally uncommon nowadays in the supplement industry, but you want to keep a really close eye on the capsule, as you mentioned, because if you're not getting a vegetarian capsule that is explicitly labeled as a vegetarian capsule, which is made out of vegetable cellulose and water, then there oftentimes can be animals in the capsule itself, which is just kind of unnecessary and gross when you're taking a supplement. So I think that's another one that I always tell people to look out for. We have an amazing no list on our website, which we love kind of directing consumers to, because it gives some of the explanation around every single ingredient that's on it and why we don't include it. So I could go on and on, but fake sweeteners and generally sweeteners in general that aren't even not fake sweeteners or something that a lot of people are trying to avoid. And there's all different names for how they can be called on the label. So sometimes an everyday consumer might not even know that it is a sweetener because it's such a unrecognizable name. So that's a great resource for people. That just is the compilation of all of our research that I think is a great place for them to check out too.
And okay, now I'm just realizing, when did you guys launch officially?
So we launched at the very end of January 2020.
Yeah. So basically your whole existence has been in a pandemic. So do you want to just talk about that? How has that been for you as a brand and starting a company during such a tumultuous and unprecedented time? And then on one hand, I'm sure that was probably a little scary in the beginning, but on the other hand, I feel like people are more interested in their health and more interested in natural remedies.
You're exactly right. So I guess on the personal side, just like everybody else, March and April and ongoing, but March and April especially last year were just terrifying months for everyone in the world. And I think being a small business owner and a new business owner during that time just amplifies your level of uncertainty around, are we going to be able to survive this? And thankfully, we were in a product category that was generally still relevant and of interest. As you mentioned, people were thinking about their health. And that was a huge blessing for us as a small brand. And then, beyond that, I would say the biggest challenge during that time was figuring out how we wanted to market ourselves. That was a month where we had those few months where we had all of our exciting launch moments planned, like events, PR moments, things like that obviously had to be canceled. But then on top of that, what level of marketing should any brand be doing when we don't even know what's going on and it's a life and death situation across the globe? And so we ended up really pulling back a lot of marketing during that time, which meant that our growth slowed, obviously. But that was kind of the decision that we made personally. And we took a few months to basically regroup, work on our product development for future launches, kind of work on our operations, because it was also a time where a lot of manufacturing was really slowed and impacted. So that's kind of what we did during that time. And then since then, though, it's been a great time to be in the natural remedy space because people are interested in holistic and preventative health. They've always been, but especially now. And as people's spending shifts, you're spending less on jeans and handbags and whatever else and more on yourself and investing in yourself and your health. So we definitely have been able to be a part of that growth.
That's great. And something also interesting about your company. So I know you have direct to consumer, so you can buy the product on your website, but I've also seen you in stores as well. So I feel like in an age where everyone gets everything delivered, I guess, how did you guys decide that you wanted to do both?
We launched direct to consumer primarily because, number one, as a small brand, it's the easiest to kind of spool up a storefront online. But we also felt like one of the core differences that we wanted our brand to have is this educational and caregiving element to our brand, which is that you don't just buy our product and kind of move along. We give you information about how to use it. We check in on you to make sure that kind of it's integrating into your routine and all of that. And that whole aspect of our brand needs to be fostered through an online community. So that was always very, very important to us for brand building and community building reasons. But that said, we are a brand that tends to be shopped in a moment of need. Online penetration in the categories that we play in is low. And I know myself as a consumer, that checks out with how I shop the category. When I, feel like I'm coming down with something, I'll go to the store and I'll buy, the 5 products that I want to have in my arsenal during that next week or two. And so we knew that we needed to be available in a moment of need very early on in our life cycle. And of course, we had to stage that. We couldn't just be in everywhere all at once because nobody would want to take a risk on us. But what we did was we started off with our direct to consumer channel, but also select offline brand building locations. So these are places in hospitality. When people were traveling, having health related products is super important and is actually a very high occurrence moment for people to experience some type of pain point. Also kind of cult wellness locations. So places like Erewhon in LA, which is just a go-to destination for a lot of people for brand discovery in this space. So we launched in around 50 doors across the country that we consider those brand building locations. And then from there, over the course of the year, we launched in a few additional online locations that are very curated for wellness. So Thrive Market, if you're familiar, Grove Collaborative have been great accounts for us because our customer is really there. And then we actually most recently launched Target 1 month ago, which we're in 750 Target stores. So not every Target, but they're health and wellness stores.
That's amazing. Congrats. That's super cool.
Thank you.
And like I told you, I think before we hopped onto the podcast, I was just in Juice Press here in New York.
Yes.
And I saw some Hilma supplements. So that's super cool.
That's one of our brand building locations.
Yeah, I love Juice Press.
Me
It's
too.
like my first stop. So you're also a new mom,
I am.
and congrats on that as well.
Thank you.
So any tips for anyone listening on juggling motherhood, working from home, living in a pandemic, like all the things? Like, how do you stay healthy, happy, and well?
So it's a great question, and I think it differs every day, but I'll start off by saying it's not easy. And so I think that, I would love to sit here and project this, vision of everyone can do it all, but it's hard and it takes a village. And I think the biggest insight that I've had from being a parent is it changes your relationship to time so dramatically. Now everything that I do, I feel like is borrowed time from something else. When I'm working, it's borrowed time from being with my daughter. When I'm with my daughter, it's borrowed time from working or, doing things around the house to help like maintain our life, our lifestyle. When I'm working out or doing something for myself, it's borrowing time from my daughter or work. And so that can very quickly fall to like the bottom of the totem pole. And I just say that having a partner who understands how important it is, especially as a woman who, as we know from the research tells us, gets saddled with the majority of the housework and childcare duties. Having a partner who knows the importance of you having time for yourself, working out, doing whatever it is that makes you feel good in your body, having that person understand the importance of that is what will enable you to do it. And so that is what I have with my husband. He takes the baby from 5:30 to 6:30. I take the baby from 6:30 to 7:30 so he can work out. Then he takes the baby from 7:30 to 8:30 so that I can work out. So we kind of have this like morning situation, which has enabled me to feel healthy and happy and have that moment for myself before the day gets away from me. Without that, I think it would be really, really hard. And then the other thing that's just, the unspoken, really important thing is like childcare. If you want to be an entrepreneur and invest the time in your business that we all know it takes, because I know, Maria, you know how much it takes too. You need to have a plan for childcare and a plan that you feel good about and not guilty about. So for me right now, I'm actually living at my parents' house with my husband and my daughter, and we're doing like a multi-generational childcare situation, which is really special. It's also not totally sustainable for my parents. So, we will be getting a caregiver when we go back to the city, but for this transitional time where, we're so vulnerable and raw, it's been really amazing to be here.
Yeah, it sounds like the bulk of your answer is make sure you have the support. Like you're saying, like it takes a village. So seeking support, not doing everything on your own.
Definitely.
So what do we have to look forward to with Hilma? Like what is on the horizon?
Well, we are going to be launching a number of new products. We actually launched 4 products this past quarter. So it was a very exciting quarter for us. And we are going to be launching, kind of continuing that trajectory and launching new products, both deeper within the categories that we already offer products in. So digestive health, immune health, and kind of pain and tension management, but also venturing into new categories. So, we believe that plants can be effective treatments for a lot of different things, including, things like sleep, things like female health, and a variety of others that we are going to be kind of looking into and expanding into in the coming months and years. And beyond that, we hope to increase our footprint so that we're more easily accessible for our customers wherever they are. We know that people don't only shop in one place anymore. So needing to be kind of in a grocery store, also in a drugstore, also in a, online, so that it's very convenient for our customers wherever they are.
Fantastic. And so one last question I like to ask everybody that comes on the show. If you can leave our listeners with a piece of advice for how they can live a happier and healthier life, what would that be?
I think surrounding yourself with people who bring out the happiness in you. I think we all have relationships that we cling on to for whatever reason that no longer serve us. So I think feeling empowered to really focus on those people, whether they are, for me, it's definitely like my co-founders, for instance, they are like the source of light in my life every day, and my partner, making sure that you are surrounding yourselves with those people.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nina. If you guys want to learn more about Hilma, you can go to hilma.co. And as she mentioned, you can find Hilma at Target, Erewhon. Where else can people find the product?
Grove Collaborative, Thrive Market, Juice Press, as Maria mentioned, Standard Dose, and a number of other places. You can check out our website. We have a Where to Find Us page.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. It was great to be on today.